let's see what we've got next. Number 2. I attempted suicide a few years ago and failed. Thank God. Since then, I've been haunted by one question. As a gay man who tried and failed to kill himself, am I permanently barred from heaven? Wow. We're all getting a glimpse into the pastor life right now. I always say, and people bring their deepest questions here, and their most buried prayers, the things that they will never say to anyone, come here. And so we're getting a glimpse of that today. And the first thing I would just, as I look at the question, I'm just instantly praying for this person. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing this depth of suffering with us. So let's think about this. Am I permanently barred from heaven? I'll say, no way. Nobody is. I believe that when we ask for forgiveness, it's granted. I mentioned 1 Corinthians 13 about love. One of the things that passage also says is love keeps no record of wrongs. Those are easy words to say, but when we feel them, they're even more powerful. Love keeps no record of wrongs. And so when we ask for forgiveness, to Jesus, when we get on our knees and we confess all that God is opened to us again. And that's something that all of us will need more than once, because all are sinful, all have fallen short, as Scripture said, and therefore if all are sinful and all fall short, all will need to ask for forgiveness of something. And so as this person wrestles with, I'd say one is the suicide issue, and then one is the sexuality. And let's kind of spend a minute thinking about those. Over the years, I've talked to many people who, for whatever reason, depression, evil, circumstances in the family, tried to take their own life. I've had some experience in that within my own family even. And here's what I know. I do believe life is God's to give and God's to take. I think when we take matters into our own hands, that is the root of many sins. If you read the Garden of Eden story where Adam and Eve eat, the root sin is there. They take literally matters into their own hands and they forget the instructions of God. Even having done that, God builds a path back for them. And so too, through forgiveness, God builds a path back to us. Here's the other thing I will say just about suicide and depression and that sort of thing. God understands that level of pain. Jesus on the cross, to me, says he understands what it's like to be us. He understands how we suffer and the things that torture us, be it psychological or evil or whatever. He knows what it's like to be one of us. And so God identifies and understands with what you're going through. And one of the things I find with people who have tried to take their own life is they feel so incredibly alone. And it's out of isolation that they make some, desperate sort of action. And what I just want you to know, if you can hear my voice today, is please know that you're not. God is with you. And I pray that, you through him would reach out to others if you find yourself struggling with this sort of thing. But God understands when we're in pain. And perhaps because of that, when we're hurting to that degree, it's all the more imperative that we reach out, not just reach out to God, but reach out to our family and friends and to our church and to our pastors and say, I'm hurting, and let's go through this together. The second thing, as the sexuality issue, this is greatly debated in our culture, and I imagine over the weeks we'll get more questions specifically about this. But here's what I just say for now. When we ask, what is it to be saved? God doesn't ask us to live a perfect life to get to heaven. Thank God. Thank God. God doesn't ask us to be perfect when we arrive or that day comes. What God asks us is to be faithful. And so I think, when God's having a conversation with us on that day and heaven and all that is very real for us, I believe Jesus is going to ask us the same questions the resurrected Jesus asked Peter at the end of the Gospels. He asked Peter, he says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Lord, I do." And if we can say that, heaven's ours. On that day, I think, as Paul says, we'll see things much clearly than we do now. Paul says right now we look through a glass darkly, but then that day will come where we see through the glass, we see clearly. I think we'll understand much more in heaven than we do now, but the only thing that it takes to get there is a heart that loves Him, and assuming that we have that, everything God has is ours, no matter the life that we've lived or the decisions we've made. Let's bring that one to a close and see what we might talk about next.